It is the central highlands of Canaan, 3,000 years ago. Night has fallen on a small stone house. An old man lies on a low bed. An oil lamp burns in the corner. And hidden in a wooden chest beside him are small clay figurines, household gods he has been worshipping alongside the God of Israel for years. He is one of the people the book of Judges is about. And you learned the Judges the way Sunday school taught them. A poster on a wall, 12 men in matching robes, lined up from Moses to David. You didn't learn that each one fell. You didn't learn the book ends with a woman's body cut into 12 pieces and mailed across the land. You didn't learn the last judge dies blind, enslaved, grinding grain in a pagan temple. And that is what the book calls a climax. The book of Judges is not a roll call of 12 heroes. It is the record of 12 collapses, each one worse than the last. And the question the book will not let you put down is this one. If every rescuer in the story ends up broken, what exactly was the book built to prove? His name was Othniel. He won Israel's first rescue and got 40 years of peace. The instant he died, Israel went right back to the gods they had just been rescued from. 40 years of peace, gone in a funeral. That is not a glitch in the system. That is the system. And it is the cycle every judge after him inherits. Not one of them breaks it. 12 judges, 12 falls. You are about to meet them in order. Before we walk through them, a quick picture of the world they lived in. Israel has just crossed into the land. No king, no capital, no standing army. 12 tribes scattered across the central highlands, surrounded on every side by stronger neighbors. Moabites to the east, Canaanite city-states in the valleys, a new people called the Philistines along the coast. Each time Israel starts worshipping local gods, a neighbor shows up, crushes them, and occupies the land. Each time it gets bad enough, someone cries out, and someone is raised up to fight back. The word the Bible uses for these people gets translated as judge, but it does not mean what most of us think. It does not mean a courtroom official. It means a rescuer, a warrior, a ruler for a season. That is what Othniel was. Caleb's nephew, from the tribe of Judah. The first name on the list. A king from the north called Cushan-Rishathaim had ruled over Israel for 8 years. Othniel went to war, won, and led Israel until he died. 40 years of peace. And then nothing. That is the first cycle in its clean form. A real rescue, a real stretch of peace. And the instant the deliverer dies, the whole country slides right back to where it started. Before Othniel's body is cold, the text says, again the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. Again. That little word is the engine of the whole book. If you have ever watched something good you built fall apart the moment you stopped maintaining it, you already know the cycle this book is about to repeat 12 times. So what happens when the next rescuer is not a clean deliverer like Othniel? What happens when the next deliverer is a left-handed man smuggling a dagger into a foreign king's private chamber? There is a kind of fighter who does not look like one. The text is about to hand you 3 of them in a row, and the weapons they use are almost embarrassing. A concealed dagger, a cattle prod, a tent peg. Watch what the book does with ordinary things. There is a moment in a workshop when someone hands you a tool you do not recognize. You turn it over, and then you understand. It is made for one specific job, and a job you had not imagined. The next 3 judges fight with tools like that. An ordinary thing, pressed into a use nobody expected. Judge number 2 is Ehud, a left-handed man from the tribe of Benjamin. Left-handedness in that world was considered an oddity, if not a disability. Warriors carried their swords on the left hip and drew with the right. Ehud reverses it. And that is exactly why he gets past the guards. The king of Moab, a man named Eglon, had been oppressing Israel for 18 years. The text tells us he is very fat. That detail is going to matter. Ehud asks for a private audience to deliver tribute. He straps his dagger to his right thigh, under his robe, and walks into the king's private upper room. The Moabite guards check his left side. They do not check his right. Nobody hides a sword there. Ehud tells the king he has a secret message from God. Eglon stands. Ehud reaches across his body with his left hand, pulls the dagger, and drives it into the king's belly so deep the king's own fat closes over the blade. The text uses that exact detail. The handle disappears. Then Ehud slips out through the porch, locks the doors behind him, and walks away. When the servants come up and find the doors bolted shut, they assume the king is on the toilet. That Hebrew euphemism, he is relieving himself, is right there in the text. So they wait. And they wait. Long enough for Ehud to get out of the country before anyone thinks to knock. Yes, the Bible tells you that. That is Israel's second deliverance. Not a heroic battle. A concealed dagger and an escape through a toilet. And the text is proud of it. 80 years of peace follow. The longest stretch in the whole book. Judge number 3 is Shamgar. He gets one verse. A farmer with an oxgoad, a long pointed stick for driving cattle, kills 600 Philistines and saves Israel. That is it. One sentence. 600 dead. The end. Judge number 4 is the one most people can name. Deborah. And here's the thing most people miss about her. She is the only judge in the entire book who actually acts like a judge the way modern readers imagine it. The others fight. Deborah sits under a palm tree and settles disputes. The text says people came to her from all over for judgment. She is also a prophetess. She carries both roles at once. The crisis of her era is a Canaanite king named Jabin, that is General Sisera. Deborah sends for a man named Barak and tells him to take 10,000 men up Mount Tabor. Barak's response is one of the strangest lines in the book. He says he will not go unless Deborah comes with him. If you have ever been in a room where everyone knows there's a problem, but no one wants to act, you know what Deborah was walking into. Deborah agrees, but she tells him, because of how he asked, the glory of killing Sisera will not go to him. It will go to a woman. Barak wins the battle. Sisera flees on foot, exhausted, and takes shelter in the tent of a woman named Jael. She gives him milk, covers him with a blanket, and waits for him to fall asleep. Then she takes a tent peg and a mallet and drives the peg through his temple into the ground. The text celebrates this. The entire next chapter is the song of Deborah and Barak, calling Jael the most blessed of women. Israel's most iconic female judge wins the war with help from an even more decisive woman holding a hammer. 40 years of peace. Then Deborah dies. Israel does evil again. If the text is already winning through concealed daggers and tent pegs through skulls, what happens when the next judge wins the biggest victory in the book, and then does something with the gold that the text clearly disapproves of? There is a strange thing about winning. The moment after a victory is often more dangerous than the battle itself. You have just proved something, and proving things changes you. Gideon won the most famous upset in the book of Judges. What he did with the gold afterward is the reason most people do not finish his chapter. Judge number 5 is Gideon, and the first thing to know about him is where the text finds him. He is not on a battlefield. He is hiding in a wine press, threshing wheat in the dark, so the Midianite raiders do not see him. That is the Bible's introduction to him. A frightened farmer in a basement. The Midianites had been riding in on camels every harvest for 7 years, taking everything. When an angel shows up and calls Gideon mighty warrior, the line reads like a joke at Gideon's expense. Gideon's response is basically, me? Then he asked for a sign. Then another sign. Then he asks God to prove it 3 separate times, including the famous test with the fleece on the threshing floor. Once wet while the ground is dry, once dry while the ground is wet. When Gideon finally goes to war, God shrinks his army on purpose. 32,000 men, down to 10,000, down to 300. The reason is stated plainly. If Israel has a normal-sized army, Israel will take the credit. With 300, there is no confusion about who won the battle. The 300 surround the Midianite camp at night, each holding a torch hidden in a clay jar and a trumpet. At a signal, they smash the jars, blow the trumpets, and shout. The Midianites wake up, panic, and kill each other in the dark. Greatest upset in the book. This is where Gideon should end. A humble deliverer, a stunning victory, a return to his village. Instead, Gideon takes the gold earrings from the Midianite spoils and melts them into an ephod. An ephod is a ceremonial priestly garment. He sets it up in his hometown, and the text says, all Israel prostituted themselves by worshipping it there, and it became a snare to Gideon and his family. Read that sentence slowly. The deliverer built the next idol. The man God used to shrink the army so Israel could not take the credit, turns around and makes an object Israel ends up worshipping instead of God. If you have ever had something you worked hard for turn into the thing that owned you, you already understand Gideon's gold. Gideon dies, and his son Abimelech takes the next step down. Abimelech is the child of Gideon and a concubine from the city of Shechem. When Gideon dies, Abimelech goes to his mother's hometown and hires a band of reckless men. Then he goes to his father's house in Ophrah and murders 69 of his 70 half-brothers on a single stone. Only the youngest, Jotham, escapes. Shechem crowns Abimelech king. the only man in Judges to claim that title. He rules for 3 years. Abimelech burns a tower full of civilians. Then he moves on to the next town, Thebez. The people of Thebez lock themselves inside their own stone tower. Abimelech walks up to burn it. A woman on the roof drops a millstone on his head. His skull cracks. And in his last moments, Abimelech begs his young armor-bearer to run him through with a sword. Why? So no one will say a woman killed him. Here is the detail that stays with me. He is dying. The blood is pooling, and his last thought is about his reputation. If you are picking up things about the book of Judges that Sunday school never touched, hit subscribe. Judges is far from the strangest book we are walking through. 5 judges in, and the office is already cracking. What does the text do when the next set of judges gets barely any narrative at all, and the one who does get a full chapter makes the worst promise in the entire book? Something shifts in the middle of the book. The camera pulls back. Whole judges go by in 2 verses. And then, in the middle of the silence, one man opens his mouth and ruins his own life with a single sentence. So take a breath and look at where we have been. 4 deliverances in: Othniel, Ehud, Shamgar, Deborah. And already the pattern is unmistakable. Each rescue holds for a generation. Each relapse comes faster. Gideon pulled off the greatest upset in the book with 300 men against an army, and then turned the victory gold into a national idol. His son Abimelech murdered 70 brothers on one stone and died under a millstone. 5 judges in, and the office itself is starting to crack. 7 more to go, and the cracks are about to split wide open. Pay attention when a book of the Bible starts skipping people with a sentence apiece. That silence is the author doing something. The camera is pulling back. The editor is saying the office itself is shrinking. And in the middle of the silence, one man makes a promise that costs him more than anyone else in the book. Imagine a bucket with a slow leak at the bottom. Every judge is someone who rushes over with a pitcher and tops the water back up. For a while, the level rises. Then the judge dies, and the leak keeps going. The next person shows up with a smaller pitcher. The one after that brings a cup. By the time the last judge arrives, there is barely any water left to save. Watch the pitcher shrink. Judge number 6 is Tola. Tola gets 2 verses, judged Israel for 23 years, died. That is it. Judge number 7 is Jair. Jair gets 3 verses. He had 30 sons who rode on 30 donkeys and owned 30 towns, judged for 22 years, died. The text is not telling you about a rescuer. It is telling you about a minor dynasty accumulating donkeys. No battles, no deliverance, just sons and donkeys. Then in the middle of this silence, judge number 8 arrives, Jephthah. And Jephthah's chapter is the longest in this stretch because of what he does in it. Jephthah is the son of a man named Gilead and a prostitute. His half-brothers drive him out of the family. He becomes a bandit leader in a region called Tob. Then the Ammonites invade. The elders of Gilead, desperate, come find him and ask him to lead the army. He agrees. Before the battle, Jephthah makes a vow to God. If you give me victory, whatever comes out of the door of my house to meet me when I return, I will offer up as a burnt offering. He wins the battle. He comes home. And the first thing that comes out of the door of his house is his daughter, his only child, playing a tambourine. If you have ever made a promise in panic and then spent the rest of your life trying to undo it, Jephthah's story will stay with you. Stop and picture that doorway. A father returning home in armor, expecting a servant, expecting a slave, expecting anyone but her, and the first thing that comes out is his daughter, playing a tambourine. What happens next is debated. The text says Jephthah did to her as he had vowed. Most modern scholars read this as a literal human sacrifice. A smaller tradition of readers argued it meant she was dedicated to lifelong virginity instead. Either reading is brutal. A father kills his child, or a father destroys his daughter's future to satisfy a promise he did not have to make. Right after, Jephthah massacres 42,000 Ephraimites over a single pronunciation. The Gileadites ask every crossing man to say a password with an SH sound. Ephraimites could not make that sound. They said it wrong. And the Gileadites killed them on the spot. 42,000 Israelites killed by other Israelites over an accent. After Jephthah, 3 more silent judges. Ibzan, 7 years, 30 sons and 30 daughters. Elon, 10 years, nothing else. Abdon, 8 years, 40 sons and 30 grandsons, riding 70 donkeys. And then, the leak gets bigger, and the pitchers run out. If the text has thinned this much around its middle judges, and the book's worst personal catastrophe is already on the page, what does it say for the last judge? The last judge is the one most people remember as strong. The text remembers him differently. Watch what the book does with its most famous hero, and where it chooses to leave him. There is a kind of strong person who is, secretly, the weakest person in the room. Their strength is loud, their weaknesses are quiet, they carry both in the same body. The last judge of Israel is that kind of strong. Judge number 12 is Samson. Before he is born, an angel tells his mother her son will be a Nazirite, set apart from birth. 3 rules: no wine or grapes, ever. No contact with a dead body, ever. And his hair is never to be cut. Remember those 3 rules. Watch him break all 3 inside a chapter. The story Samson tells himself is that he is the hero. The story the text tells is the opposite. Samson falls for a Philistine woman at Timnah. On the way to meet her, he kills a lion with his bare hands. Later he passes the carcass and finds bees have made honey inside it. He scoops out the honey and eats it. Touching a dead body, strike 1 on the Nazirite vow. At the wedding he makes a riddle, and when the answer is pressured out of his bride, he goes to the city of Ashkelon, kills 30 men, and takes their clothes to pay off the bet. Then his father-in-law gives the bride to someone else. Samson responds by catching 300 foxes, tying torches between their tails, and setting them loose in the Philistine wheat harvest, which starts a war. A personal grudge turned into a national crisis. Every fight Samson picks is personal. He never gathers Israel, he never leads an army. He kills 1,000 Philistines in one afternoon with the jawbone of a donkey. Strike 2 on the Nazirite vow, because he is handling a dead thing again, and the text notes it. Then comes Delilah, the 3rd Philistine woman. She asks him 3 times where his strength comes from. He lies 3 times. Then he tells her the truth: his hair. Delilah shaves his head while he sleeps. The Philistines come in, gouge out his eyes, and take him to the city of Gaza. They chain him to a grinding stone in a mill, the work of slaves and oxen. The last judge of Israel, grinding grain for his enemies. If you have ever watched someone gifted waste their gift on fights that did not matter, you know the Samson story. Before we tell it, the Philistines bring him out to entertain them at a festival in the temple of Dagon, the chief Philistine god. Ancient Jewish tradition read the name as fish god. Modern scholars argue it points instead to a grain or storm deity. Either way, it is the god of the people who blinded him. Thousands of worshippers on the roof to watch the blind strongman perform. Samson asks the boy leading him to place his hands on the pillars. His hair has grown back. He prays for strength one last time, and he pulls the temple down on himself. The text's final verdict on the greatest physical hero in the book of Judges is 1 sentence. He killed more in his death than in his life. That is not a triumph. That is an obituary. The last judge of Israel dies by self-destruction in a pagan temple. And with his death, the office of judge is finished. If the book's strongest hero ends blind and dead under a collapsed temple, what is left for Israel? What does the book do when there are no more judges to write about? The last judge is dead. The book is not over. What happens in the final 5 chapters is the part most Bible studies skip, and it is the part that explains everything that came before. Most Bibles divide the book of Judges into chapters. There is a gap between chapter 16 and chapter 17 that about 90% of Bible studies skip. After the last judge dies, the text does not end. It gets worse. The last 5 chapters of Judges have no named judge, just Israel being itself, with no center. Chapter 17 opens with a man named Micah. Micah steals silver from his own mother, gives it back, and then his mother uses the silver to make a household idol. Micah sets up a private shrine in his house. He hires a traveling Levite to be his personal priest. A man in the highlands building his own religion in his own living room. The tribe of Dan, looking for new land, marches through Micah's town. They steal his idol, his priest, and his entire shrine, and carry it off to a city they have just conquered. Micah chases them and asks for his gods back. The Danites tell him to shut up, or they will kill him. The text notes all of this without comment. An entire Israelite tribe stealing another Israelite's gods at the point of a sword. Chapter 19 is the one most people have never heard read in church. A Levite and his concubine are traveling home and stop for the night in the Benjamite town of Gibeah. An old man takes them in. That night, a mob of men from the town surrounds the house and demands the Levite be handed over. The old man offers them the women of his household instead. The Levite hands over his concubine. The mob assaults her all night. At dawn, she collapses on the threshold of the house, and she dies there. The next morning, the Levite finds her. I am going to walk you through what happens next the way the text does. The text does not rush it. Neither will we. He takes her body home, and he cuts it into 12 pieces. He sends one piece to each of the 12 tribes of Israel. As a call to war, Israel assembles. The other 11 tribes attack Benjamin. 3 days of civil war. Tens of thousands of Israelites killed by other Israelites. Benjamin is nearly wiped out. Only 600 Benjamite men survive, hiding in a cave. And then, after the slaughter, Israel regrets it. They realize they have almost destroyed a whole tribe. But they have also sworn not to let their daughters marry into Benjamin. So they arrange 2 waves of wife-taking. First, they massacre the town of Jabesh Gilead for refusing to join the war and hand over 400 spared virgins to Benjamin. Still not enough. Then they stage an abduction at a festival in Shiloh. The surviving Benjamite men are told to hide in the vineyards and seize daughters as they come out to dance. 600 wives in total for the 600 surviving men. The tribes of Israel end their civil war by organizing a massacre and a mass kidnapping. If you have ever been in a place where the rules quietly stopped mattering, a workplace, a family, a country, you already know the temperature of these last chapters. 4 times in these last 5 chapters, the same sentence appears. In those days, Israel had no king. Everyone did as they saw fit. That is the verdict. That is the book's last word on its own era. So what was the whole book for? What was the author trying to get us to see? 12 rescuers, 12 collapses, a dismembered body, a civil war, a mass kidnapping. The question the book has been asking from its first verse is the one it finally answers in its last. And the answer is not about the judges at all. There is a phrase that shows up 4 times at the end of Judges, and it gets heavier each time it appears. 4 times in 5 chapters. Same words, different weight. Here is what biblical scholars across traditions see in the shape of this book. Robert Alter, one of the most respected modern Hebrew Bible translators, puts it bluntly. The book of Judges is built, from the first verse to the last, to argue that without a king, Israel cannot save itself. Every judge is a temporary patch on a permanent problem. The book is the prosecution's case against the judges-only model. And the case closes with a woman's dismembered body, a civil war, and a mass kidnapping. The real subject of the book is not the 12 judges. It is the hole they all fall into. Every one of them, in a different way. Othniel disappears when he dies. Gideon builds an idol. Jephthah destroys his daughter. Samson dies blind in a pagan temple. The failures are personal. The whole is structural. So what does a book like this leave you with? First, great deliverers are not the same as lasting change. Othniel, Deborah, Gideon, real victories, real moments of light. But the text is honest about what happens after. You can win a battle and still lose the next generation. The book of Judges is telling you something most of us already know. One person's strength does not transfer. It has to be rebuilt every time, or it doesn't hold. Think about what that means for anything you have ever inherited. A marriage, a company, a faith. The strength that built it does not automatically pass to the person standing in the room now. Second, the hero is often the source of the next idol. Gideon's ephod, Jephthah's vow, Samson's isolation. The book notices something the rest of Scripture keeps confirming. The person who saves you is often the person whose shadow you are tempted to worship. If you have ever felt let down by someone you admired, Judges already told you that story. And the third thing, the one that stays with me most, is how the book ends with a sentence. Everyone did as they saw fit. Not a villain, not a battle, not a prophecy. Just a room full of people, each of them sure they already know what is right. You can feel the temperature of that sentence. It is the temperature of every broken household, every fractured country, every time people stop agreeing on what the floor is. The book is not saying they needed a dictator. It is saying they needed a center. If the Bible gets more interesting when someone lays the whole argument out in front of you, subscribe. There's that phrase again. In those days, Israel had no king. The first time it appears, it is a statement. The second time, it is a warning. The third time, it is an indictment. The fourth time, it is an epitaph. The first judge died, and the lamp in the shrine burned down. The last judge died, and the whole shrine was in ashes. Between those 2 lamps is the whole book. And the last sentence, everyone did as they saw fit, is still the sound a country makes when the center is gone.